The desert wind carried the smell of metal and dust through the old mechanic's workshop. The human, Jaren, wiped grease from his hands and glanced at the strange horizon where alien towers shimmered against the rising sun. His world had not always been like this. Once, Earth's colonies had traded freely with other species, but then came the war, short, brutal, and full of betrayal. He had fought once, but now he fixed machines for those who survived. He thought his fighting days were over. That belief was about to change. She came to him quietly, a thin figure walking with the help of crutches. Her skin glowed faintly blue under the sunlight, and her silver hair seemed alive in the breeze. Jaren had seen aliens before, but never one like her. She looked young, maybe barely into adulthood by her people's standards, and she carried the heavy weight of sorrow in her eyes. Her right leg was bandaged, the injury making her steps uneven. Jaren stopped wiping his hands and watched her carefully. She looked like she didn't belong in this scrapyard of rust and broken machines. The girl paused at the doorway, her crutches sinking slightly into the sand. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her gaze wandered over the shelves of tools, the scattered engines, the colorful scraps of plastic Jaren kept from old Earth toys. Finally, she whispered, "Sorry, sir. I can't play ball." Her voice cracked with shame, as if the simple act of speaking those words cost her everything. Jaren frowned, not because he was angry, but because he heard the truth behind them. This was not just about a game. This was about something deeper, something she had lost. He crouched down slowly, reaching under a workbench until he found what he had been saving: a bright, patched-up ball, made of scraps of rubber and plastic tied together with wire. It wasn't much, but in his hands it seemed like treasure. He held it up to her with a small smile. "Who said anything about playing? By the old rules?" he asked. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had seen too much war and loss, but refused to let despair win. She stared at him as though his words carried a kind of defiance she had never heard before. Her fingers tightened around her crutches. I can't run," she admitted. Her tone carried frustration, the same kind that soldiers carried after battles when their bodies no longer matched the memories of what they used to be. Jaren nodded slowly, as if he understood her pain better than she realized. He gently rolled the ball across the floor. It stopped at her feet. "Then don't run," he said. "Just stand, I'll move for you. The game doesn't stop just because the rules change." His words struck her like a spark in the dark. For the first time, her lips trembled, not with pain, but with the hint of a smile. The silence around them seemed heavier after that. From outside, the sound of distant engines echoed across the desert. Traders or soldiers, Jaren couldn't yet tell. He knew this world wasn't safe. The girl looked back over her shoulder, as if she expected someone to appear. Someone hunting her. Jaren noticed the fear in her movements, the way her shoulders tensed whenever there was noise. She was not just a wounded child, she was hiding from something. And now she had come to him. Jaren's instincts as a mechanic told him he should stay out of trouble. He was good at fixing broken ships, repairing tools, and trading enough parts to survive. But his instincts as a soldier whispered something else. This girl's presence meant danger, and maybe fate. He stood and placed the ball back into her hands gently. "You don't have to play today," he said softly. "But one day, you will. And when that day comes, I'll be here to make sure no one stops you." The girl blinked, and for the first time, tears glimmered in her alien eyes. She was not used to promises. In her world, promises were fragile, often broken by warlords and commanders. But this human, standing in his dusty workshop, had given her one without hesitation. And though her voice was small, it carried strength. As she whispered, "Why would you help me?" Jaren didn't answer right away. He walked to the open doorway and looked at the barren landscape outside, the broken machines scattered across the sand. The distant towers of alien design, the scars left behind by endless battles. Finally he turned back to her and said, "Because I've seen too many wars take too much from people who never deserved it. And because sometimes, the smallest game of catch can change everything." The girl clutched the ball tighter against her chest, her crutches supporting her trembling frame. In that moment, she no longer looked just like a wounded stranger. She looked like the beginning of something larger, something powerful. And Jaren, though he did not yet know it, had just taken the first step into a fight greater than any war he had faced before. The workshop grew quiet again, the kind of quiet that felt too heavy to be natural. Jaren could hear the faint hum of engines in the distance, and he knew they weren't just traders passing through. His years in war had given him an ear for trouble, and the sound of that rhythm in the air meant soldiers, patrols, or worse. He kept his face calm, not wanting to show the girl that worry had already settled in his chest. She was still clutching the patched-up ball like it was a piece of her own heart. "You're not safe out there, are you?" he asked. His voice was steady, almost casual, but his eyes searched hers carefully. She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, they're looking for me," she admitted, her voice low. Her crutches pressed hard into the sand floor, as though she wanted to keep herself upright with sheer will alone. "If they find me here, you'll be in danger too." Jaren gave a short laugh, though it wasn't full of humor. "Danger, and I are old friends," he muttered. He moved toward his workbench, pulling a dusty tarp over half-assembled engines and spare weapons he had hidden away. The girl's gaze followed him, curious and cautious. She wasn't sure what kind of man he was: mechanic, soldier, something in between. "You didn't come here by accident," he finally said, glancing at her. "So tell me, why me?" The girl's pale eyes shimmered as she whispered, "Because you help people. They said humans. They said you're different." The way she said it, broken and unsure, made Jaren's chest tighten. She had risked being hunted just to find someone like him. He wasn't sure if that made her brave or desperate. Maybe both. Before he could answer, a harsh sound cracked across the desert shuttles, dropping into the sands not far from his workshop. The vibration rattled loose bolts on his shelves. Jaren's jaw clenched. He peeked out the wide doorway and saw dust plumes rising as metal shapes descended. Soldiers. He knew their type: mercenaries dressed in alien armor, hired hands of warlords who never cared who suffered. He turned back to the girl, who was frozen where she stood, her body shaking. "Listen to me," Jaren said firmly, crouching in front of her. "You're going to stay quiet. Stay low, do not move unless I tell you." She nodded quickly, eyes wide. He gently set the ball down beside her and whispered, "Hold on to it. Don't let them take it away." Her small fingers curled around it like it was the only piece of safety she had left. The workshop door banged open a moment later. 2 armored soldiers stepped inside, their weapons gleaming under the harsh light. Their reptilian eyes scanned the mess of tools and machines. Jaren stood casually by his bench, arms crossed, grease still staining his hands, as if he hadn't noticed the danger walking through his door. "Something I can help you with?" he asked, his tone sharp with annoyance instead of fear. Taller soldier stepped forward, his helmet ridged with scarred metal. "We're searching for a fugitive. Blue skin, injured. Seen anyone like that?" His voice was gravel, mechanical from the translator built into his mask. Jaren's heartbeat slowed, not sped up. He had lied to soldiers before. He had lived through their threats and promises. "Blue skin?" Jaren repeated, scratching his chin as if trying to remember. "No, but I've seen plenty of scrap metal if you're looking for something worth taking." The second soldier sneered, shoving aside tools and spilling parts onto the floor. Jaren didn't flinch. He let his anger simmer under the surface, controlled but ready. Behind the workbench, hidden by shadows, The alien girl held her breath. Clutching the ball so tightly, her knuckles turned pale against her glowing skin. Her crutches leaned against the wall, her whole body trembling. The soldier leaned closer to Jaren. "You'd better not lie. Helping her means death." Jaren met his gaze with a steady glare. "Death doesn't scare me," he replied, his voice calm but sharp. The words carried weight, the kind of weight only a soldier who had already lost everything could carry. Finally, the soldiers backed away, muttering curses. "Search the next sector," one of them barked, and with a hiss of hydraulics they left the workshop, their heavy boots echoing until the desert swallowed the sound. Jaren waited, counted each second, then exhaled slowly. He turned back to the girl. She had tears streaming down her face, silent but full of fear. "They'll come back," she whispered. Her voice was cracked, hopeless. Jaren knelt beside her and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then we'll be ready next time," he said. "They don't know who they're dealing with." The girl looked at him, confused. "Why risk your life for me?" she asked again. Jaren didn't answer with words this time. He picked up the colorful ball, pressed it back into her hands, and said, "Because if you stop playing, they win, and I don't let anyone win that easy." Her tears fell onto the ball, making the colors shimmer in the sunlight. She didn't understand everything about him yet. But for the first time, a fragile seed of trust began to grow between them. And Jaren knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about hiding her. This was about something larger. Something that might shake the desert and the warlords who ruled it. The sound of engines faded into silence again. But both of them knew it was only the beginning. The desert sun shifted higher, burning the metal rooftops until the air shimmered with heat. Jaren stepped outside the workshop, scanning the horizon. The soldiers had moved on, but their presence lingered like smoke after fire. He knew they would return. They always returned. Once an army marked you, there was no hiding forever, inside. The alien girl sat quietly on an old crate, her crutches propped beside her. She still clutched the patched-up ball like it was a shield. Her glowing blue skin caught the shafts of sunlight leaking through the cracks in the roof, giving her an almost fragile beauty. Jaren noticed her silence and the way her gaze stayed fixed on the ground. She was too still, too empty for someone so young. "You hungry?" he asked, breaking the silence. She looked up, startled, as if no one had asked her that in a long time. Yes," she admitted softly. Jaren rummaged through a metal container, pulling out packets of dried rations left over from old Earth shipments. He set one down beside her. She hesitated before unwrapping it, the scent of food filling the air. For the first time he saw her eat with urgency, her small hands trembling as though she feared the meal might be snatched away. Watching her, Jaren felt a knot in his chest. He had seen soldiers eat like that, people who had lived too long in hunger and fear. Whoever she was running from, they hadn't just taken her freedom. They had taken her peace. When she finished, he finally asked, "What's your name?" The girl lowered her gaze. "Lyra," she whispered. The name carried a softness, but also a sadness, like a song that had been cut short. "Lyra," Jaren repeated, nodding. "Good, now I don't have to keep calling you girl in my head." He gave her a small smile, but she didn't return it. Instead, she looked at him with confusion, as if she didn't understand why he tried to be kind when kindness had no reward. "You shouldn't help me," she said after a pause. "If they know I'm here, they'll destroy this place. You'll lose everything." Jaren leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "Lost everything before," he replied simply. "Lost friends, lost family, lost a home I'll never see again. This workshop? Just metal and dust. You? You're still breathing. That matters more." Her eyes widened at his words, but she said nothing. Instead, she traced her fingers along the ball's rough surface, as if memorizing it. The quiet moment didn't last long. A warning light flickered on Jaren's console, motion sensors. Something was moving near the ridge, too coordinated to be traitors. He cursed under his breath. He didn't have the strength to fight an army anymore, but he could buy time. He turned to Lyra. "We're leaving." Her face paled. I can't move fast enough," she said, gripping her crutches. Jaren shook his head. "Then I'll move fast enough for both of us." He grabbed a dusty tarp from the corner and wrapped it around her shoulders, covering her glowing skin. "You stick close no matter what." He led her out the back entrance of the workshop, through a narrow path between broken ships and rusted parts. The desert stretched wide before them, every sound amplified in the still air. In the distance, the shimmer of armored vehicles appeared. Soldiers. They were sweeping the area again. Jaren tightened his grip on Lyra's arm, guiding her carefully. Each step was heavy for her, but she kept moving, her determination stronger than her frail body suggested. At one point, her crutch slipped in the sand, and she stumbled. Jaren caught her quickly, steadying her. "Don't stop," he whispered. "We're almost clear." They reached a half-buried transport vehicle Jaren had been working on for months. It wasn't pretty, but it still had a working engine. He lifted Lyra inside, setting her carefully on the seat. Her eyes widened at the sight of the controls. "You can fly this?" she asked. Jaren smirked, sliding into the pilot's chair. "Fly it? I built it." He slammed the ignition, and the engine roared to life, kicking up dust and sand. The noise carried far, and he knew it would draw attention. But they didn't have a choice. As the vehicle lifted from the ground, Lyra clutched the ball tightly against her chest. The desert fell away beneath them, and the workshop, Jaren's last connection to his quiet life, grew smaller until it was just another piece of metal in the sand. "You left your home," Lyra whispered, almost guilty. Jaren didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on the sky ahead. "A home isn't walls and tools," he said. "It's what you protect. Right now, that's you." The words silenced her. She stared at him, unsure how to carry the weight of such a promise. For years she had been told she was broken, useless, a burden. And now this human, who owed her nothing, was risking everything to keep her safe. The vehicle soared over the desert, but Jaren's instincts told him they weren't alone. He could feel it in his bones. The hunt had just begun. And the warlords searching for Lyra wouldn't stop until they had her back. He glanced at her once more. She was staring out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. The ball still in her hands, her crutches at her side, and her eyes full of questions. Jaren tightened his grip on the controls. He didn't know what she meant to those soldiers. But he knew one thing with certainty. If they wanted her, they'd have to go through him first. And he wasn't planning on losing this fight. The transport rattled as it skimmed, low across the desert, sand whipping against its hull. Jaren kept his eyes fixed on the scanners, watching the red dots multiply. The soldiers had spotted them, no surprise there. He knew from the moment he started the engine that stealth was over. Now it was speed that mattered. Lyra clutched the patched-up ball tightly in her lap, her glowing skin hidden under the tarp. She looked pale, her breath uneven, each jolt of the vehicle making her wince. Jaren noticed but said nothing. She was strong enough to hold herself together, even with the pain in her injured leg. He respected that. Still, he adjusted the controls, smoothing the ride so she wouldn't suffer more than she had to. "They won't stop," she whispered suddenly, her voice trembling. Jaren glanced at her, then back at the desert horizon. "I figured as much," he replied. "But you're going to have to explain why. What makes you so important?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the ball in her hands, her fingers tightening around it until her knuckles turned white. "I wasn't supposed to survive," she finally said. "When the warlords attacked my colony, they destroyed everyone like me, the injured, the weak. They called us worthless." Her voice cracked. carrying the weight of too many memories. But I lived. And because I lived, I'm proof of what? They fear that strength isn't just in perfect bodies. Jaren's jaw tightened. Her words dug deep into scars he carried himself. He remembered soldiers broken on battlefields, men and women discarded because they couldn't fight anymore. So they want to erase you, he said grimly. Lyra nodded, tears forming in her eyes. They can't let people see me. If others know I'm alive, the lie they built will fall apart. For a moment, silence filled the cabin. Jaren felt the anger building in his chest, the same anger that had carried him through battlefields long ago. He slammed the throttle forward, the transport surging faster over the dunes. Then we make sure the galaxy sees you, he muttered. The scanner beeped again, louder this time. 2 red dots closed in from behind pursuers. Jaren cursed under his breath. He twisted the controls, steering the transport toward a canyon ahead. The jagged cliffs rose like teeth from the desert floor, a maze of stone that might give them cover. Lyra gripped the seat tightly, her eyes wide as the transport dove into the narrow canyon. The roar of engines followed close behind, enemy craft. They fired bursts of plasma, the blast shaking the canyon walls and spraying rocks across their path. Jaren's hands moved with practiced skill, weaving the transport through the winding cliffs. Each movement was sharp, precise, the reflexes of a man who had danced with death too many times. Lyra gasped as a blast struck close, the heat washing over them. We won't make it, she cried. Jaren shot her a quick look, his eyes hard. But calm, yes we will. Hold on. He yanked the controls, sending the transport into a sharp dive under a stone arch. The pursuing craft tried to follow, but one clipped the canyon wall, exploding in a fireball that lit the rocks in brilliant orange. The shockwave rattled their transport, but they kept moving. One pursuer remained, its weapons locked onto them, red lights dancing across the console. Jaren growled, flipping a switch. Old trick, but it works. A panel on the back of the transport opened, spilling a cloud of metallic debris into the air. The pursuer's sensors scrambled, and when it fired, its shots scattered harmlessly against the canyon walls. Jaren seized the moment, swinging the transport into a narrow tunnel. The enemy overshot and lost them. The canyon grew darker as they flew deeper, the sunlight fading behind layers of stone. Finally, Jaren slowed the transport and set it down on a hidden ledge. The engines powered down, leaving only silence and the faint hum of cooling metal. Lyra sat frozen, still clutching the ball, her chest rising and falling quickly. Jaren leaned back in his chair, exhaling hard. Well, he said dryly, guess they don't teach canyon flying to mercenaries anymore. She stared at him, stunned. How do you stay calm when death is so close? She asked. Jaren shrugged, though his eyes betrayed the weight of experience. Because I've already met death. He doesn't scare me anymore. Her expression softened, but then her voice dropped lower. They'll send more, stronger ones. You can't fight them forever. Jaren turned to her, his gaze steady. Then we don't fight them forever. We fight smart. We make them chase us until they're too tired to continue. And along the way, we show others who you are. Lyra blinked, confused. Others? Jaren leaned forward, pointing to the stars just visible through a crack in the canyon roof. You think you're alone, but you're not. There are people, humans, aliens, anyone who's been cast aside, who will see you and know they're not worthless. That's why they're afraid of you. And that's why I won't let them win. Tears slipped down her cheeks. For the first time, she didn't look like just a wounded girl. She looked like someone standing on the edge of becoming more. The seed of hope Jaren had planted was beginning to grow, even if she didn't yet believe it. Outside, the sound of engines echoed faintly again, distant but getting closer. The hunt wasn't over. Jaren checked the controls, readying the transport for another run. He glanced at Lyra, who wiped her tears quickly and gripped the ball once more. Ready to play by new rules? He asked. Her lips trembled, but this time they curved into the faintest of smiles. Yes, the game had only just begun. The canyon walls hid them for only so long. By nightfall, the desert would echo with patrols again, and Jaren knew they couldn't stay in one place. He worked quickly, repairing the transport's scorched panels with spare parts from the toolkit strapped behind his seat. Sparks flew. As he welded, the orange glow briefly lighting up the dark cave where they hid. Lyra sat nearby, her crutches leaning against the stone. The patched ball rested in her lap as always. She traced her fingers across its rough surface, her eyes distant. Every now and then she looked at Jaren, as if trying to understand him. He had saved her life twice already, and yet he spoke with the same calmness, as if danger was an old habit. "Why do you keep helping me?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with genuine confusion. "I'm not strong. I can't fight, I only slow you down." Jaren stopped welding and lifted his gaze to her. His face was half shadow, half light, making the scars on his cheek look deeper. "You think strength is only about fighting?" he asked. Lyra hesitated, then nodded slightly. "That's what they taught us. If you can't fight, you don't matter." Jaren stood slowly, wiping sweat from his brow. He picked up the ball from her lap and held it between his hands. "This little thing here, worthless to some, right? Just scraps tied together. But it still bounces. It still carries joy. That makes it more powerful than all the weapons I've fixed." He placed it back in her hands, his voice steady. "Strength isn't just swinging a blade or firing a gun. Sometimes strength is just refusing to give up on yourself." Her eyes glimmered with tears again, but this time she didn't look away. For the first time she believed he might be right. Before Jaren could say more, the scanner on the console beeped, a faint signal. Someone was broadcasting nearby. Not soldiers too weak for military encryption. He frowned and adjusted the frequency. A broken voice crackled through the static. "Anyone, resist." "Not alone." Lyra's head shot up. "Did you hear that?" she asked, clutching her crutches. Jaren nodded slowly. The signal was faint, but it was their proof that somewhere out in the desert, resistance still existed. Not just him. Not just her. Others. "They'll kill them if they're caught," Lyra whispered. "Which is why we're going to find them first," Jaren replied. He powered up the transport, the engines humming low in the cavern. He guided it carefully out into the night sky, following the broken signal across the sands. Hours passed as they flew low over the dunes, stars glittering overhead. The desert stretched endlessly, but the signal grew stronger. Finally, they spotted a faint glow nestled among rocks, a hidden camp, its fires shielded by reflective tarps. Jaren landed the transport at a distance and approached on foot, guiding Lyra carefully with her crutches. A group of figures emerged from the shadows, weapons raised. They weren't soldiers but ragged survivors, humans and aliens alike, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. At their head stood an older woman with scars across her arms. She leveled her blaster at Jaren. "Who are you?" Jaren raised his hand slowly. "Name's Jaren, mechanic, used to be a soldier. Not here for trouble." He gestured toward Lyra. "She's the one you should meet." The group's eyes fell on the alien girl. Her glowing skin reflected the firelight, her injured leg wrapped tightly in bandages. She gripped her crutches nervously, but didn't look away. The camp fell silent. Some looked at her with pity, others with disbelief. One man muttered, "She's broken. Why bring her here?" Jaren's jaw clenched, but before he could speak, Lyra lifted her chin. "Because I lived," she said firmly. Her voice carried across the firelight, stronger than it had ever been. "They tried to erase me. They called Me worthless, but I'm still here. And if I can stand, even like this, then none of you are worthless either." The survivors exchanged glances. Something shifted in the air. Hope, fragile but real. Jaren watched her, pride swelling quietly in his chest. This was what he had seen in her from the beginning, the strength no one else recognized. The scarred woman lowered her weapon slowly. "If they find you here, they'll burn us all," she warned. "Then let's give them something to fear." Jaren said, his voice sharp. "They think they can hunt one girl. Let them see she isn't alone anymore." The camp grew restless, whispers spreading. For so long they had hidden, too afraid to resist. But now, faced with the sight of a disabled girl standing tall despite her wounds, something awakened in them. That night, around the fire, plans were whispered. Jaren laid out maps drawn from memory, old routes of soldiers and supply lines. The survivors listened, their eyes hungry for a chance to fight back. And through it all, Lyra sat quietly with her ball in her lap, watching the flames dance. For the first time since her colony was destroyed, she wasn't running. She was standing with others. As the firelight flickered across her face, Jaren leaned closer and whispered, "This is only the start, Lyra. Tomorrow, the rules change." She looked at him, her lips curving into a small but certain smile. "Then let's play." And somewhere beyond the desert, under the endless stars, the warlords who hunted her tightened their nets, unaware that the game was about to turn against them.